Okay, I'd like to show you how to install and get started with the SOTAMAT skimmer, which is a plugin for WSJT-X FT8 software and for SparkSDR software-defined radio software that will allow you to be a monitoring station and help other amateur radio operators who are using SOTAMATE to send SOTA or POTA or messaging commands remotely in the field, and your radio can pick up those commands and execute them. You can be part of the network. So we're going to go to the website here, SOTAmate.com, and then we're going to go to About Skimmer, and you can read all the messages there, and down at the bottom there is a link to the SOTAMATE plugin. You may have to log in here. We're going to go down into Build Current, and you could see all of the different pre-made builds for different platforms and operating systems. I happen to have a Windows box with an Intel processor, so I am going to click on the triple dot there and say Download, and it'll download that. And then I'm going to go back up a level while that downloads, and I'm going to download the PDF file with all the instructions. So let's download that, and now we have our PDF file, and in the background we're still downloading the executable, the skimmer for Windows, and that'll take it a little while, and you can read through the instructions while that downloads. And so if I go down into there, you can see the executable. So to run the executable, and just make sure it's the right one for your machine, the right architecture, you can bring up a command prompt. So go down to your Windows key, find the command prompt. You can do that this way. The other way that you can run the command prompt is if you do the Windows key on your keyboard and the letter R at the same time. So Windows R, it brings up this little window, and you can type in CMD and enter that, and it will bring up the a command window. So we have a command window, and we want to go to the directory where we've installed our executable. So in my case, I'm going to copy this path. I'm going to come over to my command window and say CD for change directory. I'm going to paste in that path. You got to be careful. It's better if you don't put spaces in your path, because then you don't have to quote it. And here I am. So if I type in dir for directory, you can see there is the same executable that we're seeing in File Explorer. But now we can run it. So I'm going to just type in the first couple letters of that program, SOTAMATE skimmer. .exe, and if you hit tab, it'll complete it for you. And then I'm going to hit enter key, and it says that it's running. So it ran, it put the copyright notice, and it says error, that you need to supply a call sign, a password, and a grid square. Type the help command, hit a key to exit. So we're going to hit a key, and we're going to run that same command again, SOTAmate, and then hit tab, and it completes it, space, -- help. And it shows you all of the different commands. So we can give it a call sign, we can give it our grid square, and we got to give it our SOTAmate password. So let's hit a key to exit. So again, I could do SOTAmate skimmer, I could do -C for call sign, and then equals AB6D. I can do -P for password equals, and then put whatever my password is, and then for grid square -G equals CM87T0, and then that's not my real password, so it's not going to work, but you get the idea. And it gets a little farther this time. It says that SOTAmate server returned an error while authenticating. Well, that's because I didn't have the right password. So it gives, again, the example command line, and that's the error message that we had a bad password. So anyway, you're going to have to put in the right password. So that's one way that you can run this thing, is from the command line. The other way is to do a shortcut. So we're going to come down to, and this is all described here in the PDF instructions. One other way that I think might be easier for some people is to set up environment variables. We'll do that next. Okay, so the next thing is rather than run it from the command line, it's sometimes easier to run it as a shortcut on your taskbar. So it says in the instructions, copy your skimmer somewhere. Okay, we did that. And to create a Windows shortcut, just drag and drop the exe onto the taskbar. So let's come back to our File Explorer. There's our exe. I'm going to drag and drop that down to my taskbar here and see how it shows link. It's going to create a link to that exe. And there is the link now, SOTAmate Skimmer. So I'm going to right-click on that. And then I'm going to right-click on SOTAmate Skimmer and go to Properties. And then that brings up this properties window. Up here at the top, if you got to scroll all the way over to the right there, you can see that. We're going to type in at the very end, after the exe, we're going to type in a space. And then let me get this window out of the way. We're going to put in those same command lines. So again, come all the way over to the right, put a space between after the exe. Then I'm going to type in -C for call sign, and I'm going to say C equals AB6D space -P for the password equals, and then I'm going to put in whatever my password is, space, and then -G equals, and my grid square, CM87T0, and that's all I need to do. And then I can say OK, and now I can just run the program. Oh, and I get, because it's not digitally signed, it costs about $1,000 to get a digital signature for application, and I'm not willing to pay that, so you're going to get this message. You click on, you only have to do this the first time. You click on more info and then say run anyway. Basically, since it's not digitally signed by me, it says it doesn't know who this program's from. If you're not comfortable with this, you can, and if you're a software developer, the source code is available on GitHub. It's all open source, so you can build it yourself, and you don't have to use my pre-built. But for convenience, I've compiled the code for non-developers, non-software developers, and then you get this window. So again, we're getting an error here because I didn't show you what my actual password is. But if you put in your real password, that would work. Okay, so then from then on, you could just click that button. It keeps showing it on the other screen, and it runs the program for you. Okay, so you would, of course, have to run your WSJT-X application first, and then after WSJT-X is running, then you would run this, this shortcut. Now, the other way to do it, as the instructions say, is instead of using this these parameters here, you know, here again, this is a good example of how you would run this. So, you know, SOTAmate Skimmer -C, your call sign -P, your secret password -G, your grid square, and then you can put these other parameters on here. If you look at the rest of the instructions, if you're just doing a single computer with WSJT-X and the skimmer, you have to set up WSJT-X with these settings in the settings menu. And then again, there should be an equal sign here. So -C equals your call sign, -P equals, and your secret, and -G and an equal sign, and that. This is, I got to update these instructions. They're old. But there's another way, which is to use environment variables. Under the help, you can see here that you can either use that -C parameters we've shown, or you can define an environment variable for these three required parameters, right? That. So let's show that. So to set an environment variable, which might, for some people might be easier, is you go to your Windows command and you type in environment variables, and you can see here, edit the system environment variables. It's in your control panel. And when I click on that, it brings up this window, and there's a button here. So this is your system properties under advanced, and then there's environment variables. And so if you click on that, under that you could say new, and you can put in your environment variables. So the first environment variable we're going to type in there is SOTAmate call sign, and I'm going to give it AB6D and click OK. Then I'm going to do new, and I'm going to say my SOTAmate grid square, and I'm going to type in there CM87, whatever your grid square is for your house. And then for SOTAmate password, we're going to put in that environment variable, and then you're going to put in your secret password, whatever that is. That's not my secret password. Okay? And then you click OK, and then you click OK, and then now you're going to have to shut down. You might need to reboot your machine so that that gets loaded. But when you run a command prompt after that, so if I again come up to the Windows key and type in command prompt and bring up the command prompt, change to the directory where my SOTAmate skimmer is. So I'm going to copy that directory, CD for change directory, go there. There's that executable. If I type in SOTAmate skimmer, and this time I'm not going to give it the -C parameter, or the -P parameter, or the -G parameter, because they're defined in my environment variable. It's going to pick it up from there. So now I do that, and again, it gave me an error because I have the bad password, but it did figure out my call sign and all that stuff. So there's the call sign that I gave it through the environment variable, and it got my grid square. So as long as you put in your correct password, that should work through the environment variable. And then if you do it that way, when you do your shortcut, if you use a shortcut, you can just execute the program the way I'm doing here. But if you did the shortcut, again, if you right-click on it, right-click on that and say Properties, that brings up the Properties window. In that case, you wouldn't need all these command line parameters here. You would just leave that blank as the SOTAmate skimmer, okay? And then just clicking on that, it would, again, get those values from those parameters. It would get them from the command line. All right, that's it for getting up and running on a basic Windows machine. Now, if you go through the instructions, there's a lot of different situations. I just showed you the first situation here on page 5, which is all on a single computer where WSJT-X and SOTAmate are running on the same machine, and they're just using the local internal to the machine's network to connect the two. Remember, you got to go into the settings menu on WSJT-X and set it up like this. But if you have two machines with two radios, you could do this. If you have two different computers and you want WSJT-X running on one computer, and then maybe you want to run SOTAmate sometimes when you're out of the house and you have a laptop or something, you want to run it on a separate machine, you can do it this way. If you use other third-party plugins for WSJT-X, then they would conflict with each other. And in that case, the solution is to use multicast. So you can tell WSJT-X that you want it to send its commands not just to one app, but multiple apps. And that's what multicast is. So for example, if you're running the third-party program JTDX or some other third-party program, and you want to run the SOTAmate skimmer simultaneously, then WSJT-X will send to this multicast network, and both programs will receive the messages. And you can get even more complicated if you have two different radios on one served up by one computer. So you've got a Yaesu and an ICOM, and they're both plugged into this computer, and you want to have multiple apps. You can define that. And so on and so forth. So it can get really complicated depending on how many radios you have and what kind of setup and what operating system. But all of the permutations are kind of covered in the document here. And in fact, even if you don't have your own radio, you can use a remote radio with a remote antenna that's in another state, another country, anywhere in the world. And you can use WebSDR and bring the audio over the internet to a web browser, and then you can use a virtual audio cable to inject the web browser's audio into a WSJT-X on your local computer, and then have that go into SOTAmate. So this is a way to skim from remote software-defined radios using somebody else's radio. You don't even need a radio to use the skimmer. All right, and there's more and more and more instructions for more and more advanced users. All right, well, that's a basic introduction. Let me know if you have any questions. On the SOTAmate site is an email address under About with where you can send questions to the support email line. All right, good luck, 73.